Hello there and welcome to Peter's Model Corner. On today's menu we have this 1 to 72nd scale Leopard to A7V from Vespid Models. Now Vespid Models is probably my favorite 72nd scale company, their models are truly brilliant, so I was really excited to start working on this one. So let's get right into building. The assembly starts really simply, you just start adding some of the small little details onto the hull and also adding the swing arms. Thankfully, Vespid did think of making the swing arms pinned in such a way that they go in as they should. You don't have to try getting them to align perfectly or anything. The pins are just done in such a way that they go in perfectly, which is one of the reasons why I love Vespid so much. I used Tamiya extra thin cement for gluing all the bits together. This is because the extra thin cement, the one that I use, is fast drying, which means I add it to the piece and it just immediately dries, and that makes a sturdy, nice connection really quickly, which helps with the assembly. Link and length tracks are often really intimidating for modelers, and I tried to find ways that allow me to create link and length, or well, build link and length in a simple way. And what I do is basically what Nightshift does in his videos with this kind of tracks. First thing I do is I wrap all the single pieces around the sprocket wheel and the idler wheel. Then I simply start wrapping the single link pieces around all of the wheels that I dry fit. This way I can create one single track sub-assembly like you would find in a trumpeter kit, and I have it easily prepared for removing when I need to paint it, and everything is one big piece, so I don't have to look for all the wheels and try to paint every single wheel individually, just have one big sub-assembly. People often dislike not having a choice between a photo edge and a plastic part in these small kits because the photo edge can be completely tiny, but for example here with these back vents, I do really appreciate Vespid including these photo edge bits because they do elevate the model onto a quite high standard, and it is one of the problems that I have with Vespid. Their photo edge can be quite complex and tiny, but if you just choose the easiest bits, it can still make the model quite enjoyable and look amazing without having to bother with complicated photo edge. Or you can use all the photo edge if you really want to, I mean, it is doable of course. For gluing the photo edge bits, I use a simple cheap super glue that I found in a market. I try my best not to get the super glue onto the grade of the photo edge itself, because once you start painting, and you will notice it unfortunately on this model as well, the super glue kinda just fills the texture, makes a blob of paint in the spot, which isn't the best. Otherwise, the kit goes together almost like a Tamiya kit, everything fits perfectly, so I didn't want to bother you with it. Of course, I'm gonna point out you get a metal barrel to the tank to use it, and this is quite a nice inclusion. I really love when model companies do this, and more of them should, because it didn't really even make the price higher, and it's cheaper than getting it aftermarket. Right, so the assembly is complete. As I said, it was really simple, really easy. Now I want to do something a little more interesting. I wanted to create a camouflage netting on the vehicle, and I wasn't sure how to do it unless, well, other than buying the aftermarket sort of camouflages that exist. But I came up with some interesting idea, and you can see me trying it here. What I'm doing is, first I create tarps on the parts that I would like to have the netting on. The tarps are made out of paper that was dipped into diluted PVA. This basically infuses the fibers of the paper with the PVA glue, and once it dries, it's rock hard, and it can be shaped like a real tarp. Only issue is that it does kinda tear, and there is a specific way you have to do it, but if you get it right, it looks really nice. So what I did is first I made these tarps, because even if my idea of the camouflage won't work, I will have nice tarps. However, the main reason I did it this way is that once it dries, it's actually removable because it's so hard. You can just snap it off and it doesn't damage anything, it doesn't damage itself. So that's one thing I needed, because I wasn't sure the camouflage would work. So I wanted to keep it removable in case it doesn't. Once this was dry, then came the second sort of part of the idea. As you can see, I can just take the tarps off. Basically what I decided to do is I took this ammo by Make Fine Bush. It's sort of just, I think, dried seagrass. You can often see modelers use this for trees. And I decided to use it for sort of more realistic camouflage netting sort of thing, because what I noticed on my references is that it does seem like on the net they do throw real leaves on, and therefore I just started adding on little twigs of leaves to create the camouflage effect. I've never seen anyone do it this weird way, but you can judge at the end yourself how it looks in your opinion. Anyway, with that done, it was time to start priming. Now, first of all, I just sprayed the model in black Mecha primer from Vallejo as always, and after a bad cut it was time to start the camouflage. I wanted to do the basic NATO free-tone camouflage, so I got the free NATO camouflage colors from AK. These are all 3rd gens, and they are called NATO Black, NATO Green and NATO Brown. I don't know if they are for the NATO camouflage, but they said NATO on the store, so I just bought them. The first camouflage I started spraying from the camouflage pattern was the NATO Green. I sprayed it in thin layers across the entire vehicle. Of course, the black primer helped me create fake shadows and also areas that were hard to reach. I didn't spray almost at all because there was a black shadow there. I don't know if the real camouflage actually has green as the basis. I assume yes, because I've seen only green leopards, but I'm not gonna guess. This is how I did it. With that being done across the entire vehicle, I started the typical post-shading method that you can see in my models. Essentially, what it is creating fake highlights and therefore fake shadows in a way across the entire vehicle to make it look more dimensional and also lighter, because as you might have noticed somewhere, on model shows or something like that, 72nd scale models are smaller, therefore they reflect less light, and therefore they look way darker than they actually are, which isn't the best thing for your model, and that's why I do this post-shading method. To explain what post-shading is, basically you take the basic color that you used and you add a lightener color to make it lighter. In this case it was buff, but you can also use white or deck 10 or whatever light color you think would fit with the color you're using, and you spray the lighter color on highlighted areas. In my case, what I do is I spray the insides of panels if it's a vertical piece, and if it's horizontal I spray towards the top. But it's not 100%, I sometimes switch it, however I think is necessary. Basically you take the lightener, you spray, and then you just lighten and lighten it until you're happy with the contrast. I personally push the contrast quite far. I basically almost try to get this checkerboard effect, which is something most modelers avoid, but I kinda like it. It makes the model look three-dimensional, and it helps with the washes not darkening the model as much as they would normally. At this point I started watching the Night Shift's Puma model because I wanted to see how he did the camouflage. and he freehanded it, which gave me an excuse to freehand it as well because I hate masking. So I just freehanded all of the camouflage colors, and I did the same thing on them. While I still had green in my brush, I also sprayed the camouflage netting thing, and this actually kind of solidified it looking pretty good, so I glued it onto the model. It was time to start brush painting all of the teeny tiny details. Now there isn't much stuff on the Leopard's surface, it's more or less just armor and one or two pickaxes at the engine deck, so I painted the wooden handles with NATO brown because it seems like a good wooden base. Then I made some stripes of buff on that just to create the wooden texture effect. And the pickaxe heads were painted in dark grey. Looking at the references, I sort of noticed that the tarp slash net that the leaves were attached to on real vehicles seemed brown, unless it was just really muddy. I don't know, but I decided to paint it brown while keeping the leaves green because I thought that would create a nice three-dimensional. I wouldn't be satisfied with a flat brown, so I also added some highlights to make it look like it's made out of actual fabric. I don't know if it looks good, but I kind of liked it. I actually decided to even use decals on this model, which I don't do particularly often, but I liked these danger stripes or whatever they're called on the back, so I added them there, and also the Bundenschwer marks on the sides. After I added the flat varnish to seal everything together and make the model flat and just look better, I decided to try something different. I wanted to try a sort of light wash on the model instead of a dark wash, so I took the Africa dust from AK, the enamel effects, and I diluted them. I simply started applying it as a normal wash. It simply just did, I guess, the opposite thing of a normal wash, but it was still just a wash to highlight all of the details, and I must say it was quite interesting. It looked pretty good, but it looked more like I just skipped the washing stage and I went right into dust, which isn't the worst because it actually made the turret look more tied into the model later when I added the dust, because that's one of my problems when I weather the hull. The turret looks like it's from a different vehicle. I must say it was quite an interesting effect, and I won't say that I dislike it. It definitely made the model lighter, which I quite liked personally, but I did decide at the end to add the darker wash as well. And honestly, combining the light wash with the dark wash was probably even better than just one or the other. I really did like how that made the model look. It created a nice contrast, made the model look really more detailed than it actually was, even though these models are probably the most detailed for the scale. Now watch me forget about this technique and just not use it anymore. Since the Leopard 2A7 especially is quite a modern new vehicle, I decided not to do any chipping. I definitely could have, but I was kind of just trying to get it done at this point. I do get quite ADHD'd out of projects if they take too long, so I started doing the basic mud and dust effects. This was first sprayed deck 10 on the bottom to create the pre-dusting. That is also one of the reasons why I didn't paint the tracks, because they would just get painted over anyway. And as you can see, I just started spraying the lower hull, creating some sort of nice dust effects. Of course, I was following a reference of one specific Leopard that I found on the internet. Apparently they get really fucking dirty, so that's what I tried to replicate here. You can see what I meant by the wash, tying everything more together. I never know what parts of the upper parts of the tank would get dusty. The reference don't show it particularly well. I don't wanna, well, I usually guess, but the light dust wash actually made it way easier, so I just covered the entire bottom in a dusty color. And then, according to reference, I started applying dark mud enamel effects onto the bottom. On the reference, it appeared that the vehicle went through mud so quickly, the mud got all the way up to the driver's seat, basically. So I recreated that here. The front is just completely covered in mud. Since these were enamel effects, I blended them together with an enamel thinner, and I just made the entire lower hull completely, basically brown from all of the mud. However, the mud wasn't as dark as I would like it to, so I used a dark brown wash to create these sorts of wet streaks from in between the panels on the side skirts, and just make everything way darker, way dirtier than it already was. I think this was a pretty cool effect to do. I really liked how this looked. Once this was all blended together, the model was basically done. Well, another day, another project finished, and I must say I'm really happy we've done this one, especially the mud effects. It's one of the things that I'm not particularly best at yet, and I still try to learn them more and more, but here I was pretty happy with how it turned out. Also, the camouflage netting, I was kind of surprised it came out as well as it did. I was expecting it to be a disaster, that's why I made sure all the parts were removable in case I just need a plain old Leopard instead of this. However, that is my opinion, and I would love to hear your opinion on this model. Tell me down in the comments what you think. I'm kind of gonna try some bigger scales in the next two videos, and yeah, that's gonna be fun. So I would like to thank you all for watching this video. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. If you liked the video, please give me a like, consider subscribing, try making the algorithm like me, push the videos out, because I want people to see them, right? That's why I'm here. So yeah, thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.